Good morning, Mr. Freeman.
Hi.
Thank you for being here
You're
and
welcome.
for letting us share in this moment with you. We are from the community of Indiana Jones here in Spain, and we would like to ask you some questions about you and your career. So the first question is regarding movies and television. You have played more than 120 works.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I've never counted them.
Well, in IMDb, there is a lot of your works, and that's a huge career. So, what criterion do you follow when it comes to choose a play in a role, you know, in a movie or in theater?
I've never had a career where the work flowed in. That is, where there was a continuity. So I've gone from job to job and judged each one according to what turned up. So there hasn't been a steady set of criteria. Sometimes I've taken jobs because I needed the money. Sometimes I've taken the jobs, and I hope most of the time taken the job because I wanted to do the film. A lot of the time I work in the theatre in between too, so I get satisfaction there about making choices which are just for me. Mm-hmm. But there hasn't been one set of standards, one set of criteria for doing movies.
So you were doing as it come, like not saying, I'm going to specialize in this kind of roles?
Well, the only time I made any decision like that was after Raiders of the Lost Ark, when for a few years afterwards I was offered a lot of parts playing Nazis. Some of which I did. They were quite interesting, and I went to a lot of different countries to do them. But then there came a time when I think there was a year when I played the commandant of 2 concentration camps in the same year. And I thought, where's this leading me? It looks as though I'm having a career where I'm progressing towards playing Hitler, and then it will finish. You know, I thought I didn't want to do that anymore. Besides, those sorts of parts are very badly written. They're never interesting as humans. So I made a conscious decision then not to do any. Although immediately afterwards, after I'd made that decision, I was offered the part of a good German. The producers kept saying, no, he's not a Nazi, he's a very good German.
Okay, so it's more like knowing how to reject a part.
Yeah, and sometimes you're able to reject things easily because it's terrible and you wouldn't touch it. Other times one needs the money and you have to compromise a bit.
Okay. So you're an actor that masters cinema, television, as well as theatre. Which of these media do you feel more comfortable working with?
I don't like television very much. It's always too fast. And although it's changing, television, the writing, especially American TV, is getting more and more interesting all the time. Series like Breaking Bad and True Detective. But, so I enjoy film and theatre most. The big difference between them is that in the theatre during the performance, I'm in control. With film, it's about very small moments. You've started those bells again.
Yeah. Here we go. So theatre maybe is a matter of being close to the public.
Well, the big thing about theatre is it's very rare that you make enough money to live on in the theatre. So with TV work and film work subsidises that for a start.
You had your own company.
I had, for a time, I had a company when I lived in the States for a while, yes. I didn't succeed in producing anything. I was mainly trying to get theatre pieces produced, not film. I've never tried to produce a film. Or tried to direct one of them. But the thing I like about film is that you're in control for a very short space of time. For 2 or 3 seconds when it's just the camera and you are in control at that moment. Now, there are lots of things in film that go against you being in control at that moment. The major one being whoever has the final cut in the editing room.
Yeah.
which nowadays is often not the director, but the producers, or even an accountant, secretary somewhere. So you can't finally tell what's going to end up in the film, but what you can control is that few seconds when it goes down into the lens. You know.
And those seconds.
And I like that, and I like the whole teamwork that you get together with on a film, working in a team like that. And sometimes the team is unhappy. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad film, strangely. Some of the happiest times one's had on a film, the film turns out to be very bad. Just that and usually, the life that's going on in the making of the film is more interesting than the final film.
Yeah. And can you tell, by the script, can you tell if the movie is going to be a great movie with great characters? That has to tell.
You can tell from the writing if the writing is good. What you can't tell is what the director is going to do with it. And I've known a lot of directors who start the film badly. They're unhappy with the actors, they're unhappy with the producers, and for some reason, this project that they've worked on for months and months, they will almost go out of their way to sabotage from day one.
Yeah, it's a pity.
Yeah. And I've seen it happen a few times. It's very strange, just to do with nerves and stress.
So, along your career, you have played great villains like Belloq or Moriarty. What is more attractive for you as an actor, playing villains or playing, well, let's say heroes? I don't like to make such a dichotomy, but how is?
I don't think that's how you judge it. You judge it by the quality of the writing. If it's a hero and is badly written, there's no point in playing that. And similarly with the villain, you know. If the writing is good enough and if the characters are interesting enough and the story is good enough, it doesn't matter whether the character's good or bad. You find something human in them anyway. I had great struggles once with a film where it was a Dutch film, which I'm rather proud of, called Morlang. And the Dutch company had hired an American press company to do all the publicity. And the pressman, this man was it was a true story in Holland about a man who entered into a pact, a mutual suicide pact with his wife. And then when he killed her, he didn't kill himself afterwards. That's a true story. It's an interesting story. He was an artist. And this publicity man kept going on about how evil the character was. And I refused to accept that, and I refused to give him any sort of credibility about it, because I don't think evil in itself exists. There's a reason for it. And if you're a human being, there are human reasons for it. And that's what makes the writing interesting and what makes the characterization interesting.
Yeah, that's something really important. We're going to change Melissa's subject. We'd love to talk about your experience in Riders of the Lost Ark, since we are from the Indiana Jones Association. How was working with Lucas, Ford, Spielberg? How was the relationship with them?
Fine, very easy, very relaxed and easy. George Lucas doesn't have, or didn't then, and I don't know if it's changed, but he doesn't have a great rapport with actors. For instance, I'll tell you a story. There are a number of young German soldiers who appear in the film, if you remember. They were all hired, we were filming in that section in Tunisia, and they were all hired from their holiday. They were all on vacation there. And George turned up one day and said to us, "You actors should go and sit down, because I've written all these other scenes for the Germans because they're very good and they're really natural and they're not acting at all." So we all said, "Okay, get on with it." And one of our actors, Ronnie Lacey, who played the man in the leather gear with the burnt hand, do you remember? Yeah. Wonderful actor, now dead, unfortunately. Said they will never use this in the film And sure enough, they don't. All of those scenes never appeared. But it was sort of, we always felt it was a sort of lesson to us from George to say, you are expendable. Finally, it's not true, of course.
Yeah.
The story is about those characters that we were playing.
Yeah.
But I guess if any of these German actors had turned out to be, well, German tourists they were, turned out to be wonderful, they might still be in the film.
Yeah.
And the others, Harrison's extremely relaxed and easy to get on with. And Stephen too. Stephen, at the time, and probably still, to some extent, is obsessive about film. This must be true of George as well. But Stephen makes no bones about it because his conversation, and I had quite a few conversations with him because for quite a bit of the film, I was the only person he would talk to because everybody else was cross with him. Mainly because in Tunisia we were working so fast, and it was so hot. I was happy to sit there listening to his stories, which are all about making of movies and old movies and so on. And then a few stories about his childhood too in Arizona. We all got on very well during the making of it.
And what about Karen Allen and your famous...
Oh, Karen Allen's a lovely actress and a lovely person. I've seen her, she's the only one I've seen a few times since. I've spoken to Harrison. We were going to meet in New York a few years ago. The bells! And we'd arranged to meet, and then he rang me and said he had to go off the next day and pick up a plane. He bought a new plane, so he had to go to Texas.
He has like 6 planes or something, like small ones, but 6.
Yeah.
So do you keep in touch with them? Not regularly, but...
No, I'm vaguely in touch with Karen.
Yeah.
And she comes to Britain sometimes to do some signings. Has she done a signing with you? Have you met her?
No, we didn't have the pleasure.
She was in Britain in May doing a signing, and I was going to be there with her, which was sad. I wanted to see her again, but I got a job, so I couldn't do it.
What do you think what part of you is in Belloq, in the character? Did you, or the character was really defined by George and Stephen, or did you put something of you to the character?
Well,
like changing something like that.
If I played it well, inevitably there was something of me in it, because whatever you do, there is something of you in it, isn't it? You invest whatever you do with your own personality. But I didn't make up any lines, except for the drinking scene with Karen Allen, which was largely improvised, because Stephen knew we were both theatre actors. And that scene hadn't been particularly written, hadn't been fleshed out. So he asked us to go away and rehearse it and improvise it together, show him what we'd done, and he said that's fine, and that's more or less what we shot. I can't remember what the original scene was like now, but none of us were quite satisfied. It hadn't been well written. So that was very much our contribution in the film. And then I suppose my contribution to Belloq was just, of course, I'm not an archaeologist and I had no experience in those sorts of adventures, but one brings one's imagination to it.
Yeah. Because the character is great, so that we were wondering that since in cinema and working with the Spielberg, normally the actors give suggestions to the director, why don't we do this, why don't we do that, so that kind of things. Like,
it was only the 3rd film I'd done, I think 4th film, I did a TV film in between. I think it would have been very presumptuous to have told Stephen what he was doing. And also, I was bowled over by Stephen's breadth of vision, the fact that something that I'd read on the page and learnt as being a small scene between 3 people. For instance, there's a scene early on where we're walking across the dig, and there's Anthony Higgins and Wolf Kahler and me. And that was meant to be a scene inside a tent, with no extras or anything. Well, we got to the set, and he had hundreds of extras. It's that big scene where people are carrying buckets of sand and baskets of sand and going up ladders and all sorts of buildings in the background. That was part of his great vision as a filmmaker, to enlarge. The scene between the 3 of us was exactly the same. It was just that it made a big statement about where they were and what they were doing and how they were doing it.
giving the life to the scene. Yeah, it's important. So, we believe that Belloq is one of the most recognized characters. How do you deal with the preparation of this character in a special way, like preparing the accent or something like that? Because you're well known for using different accents in your career.
I had limited French. I'd been to France a bit. It wasn't a problem. I also think I don't try to do accents which are a problem. I think it has to be easy. You don't want to see someone struggling with an accent. Yeah. If it's not easy, then don't do it. Or find some equivalent. But there was a nice story about it that I'd met Stephen and George in LA. I just finished a film called Dogs of War in the Caribbean, and I flew to LA to meet them, and they gave me the script. And then they said, okay, do you like it? I said, yeah, I think it's terrific. And they said, well, we'll let you know in a week. So I went with my girlfriend, now my wife, and we drove the car around Arizona while we were waiting to hear. And in the middle of that trip, after 3 or 4 days, he said, fine, you've got the part, that's great. I went back to Britain and continued with my life. And more or less, that must have been in the spring, in June or July. My girlfriend, she was then living in Paris, came across, and we were on a holiday in Britain on a barge. We have these canals in Britain. You can go right up and down the country, very beautiful. And there was a sign on the side of the canal saying, will Paul Daneman phone his agent? Which is not the sort of thing you expect to see in the middle of the countryside by a lock on a barge. And I knew Paul Daneman, who was an actor at the time, now dead. And I thought, he doesn't barge, I know that. So there's a good chance they've got the name wrong, and it's me. So I rang my agent from this town. And they said, yes, it is, and Stephen wants to see you now, quickly, in Elstree, in the studio. So I had to leave my girlfriend on the barge, and I went back to the studio to see him. And I walked in through the door, he said, Paul, how are you doing? So, and then he said, I forgot to ask you if you can do a French accent. And I said, yeah, just like that. And I said, well, it'll be something like this, and I will talk a bit like this. And he said, okay, that's fine, and thank you very much, and off you go. Well, we started work a few weeks later. It was as simple as that.
Easy.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. So
there's a great lesson in that, by the way. I always think about getting jobs. If the director isn't sure of himself, he will never be sure about the casting. When I go into a casting and they're all going, oh, we're not sure if it's going that way, we're not sure it's going, I think they don't know their own minds. What they're really waiting for is somebody to come in and make their mind up for them. Whereas with Stephen, he knew exactly what he wanted. In fact, he'd already cast the part. Did you know that?
No.
He'd cast it with a well-known Italian actor whose name, am I going to be Giancarlo Giannini had the part before. Very good actor. But for some reason, Stephen had seen me in this TV film I did just before called Death of a Princess, which was a sort of drama documentary about the execution of a Saudi Arabian princess, a true story, and thought I would be right for this part, even though I'd already cast it. So that's how it happened.
It's a pretty important part in the movie, so that's logical. Playing different accents, do you think that's something natural on you, or is part of your job, or?
For me, it's part of my job. It's something I enjoy, and I think it's something about the sort of actor that I am. And there are different types of actors, and I'm an actor who likes to sort of hide behind something. I like disguise. I like the characters I play to be somebody else. I like to get in the head of somebody else. There are other actors who just want to be themselves and make every part like them. I want to get away from me. I have enough of me in my own life.
What about your side? Your penetrating, impressive side is something that you have you have as a person, or is something that you really train for movies and?
I don't know what you mean by that, by sight.
You have penetrating eyes, and
when
you look.
That's entirely genetic, thanks to my parents. Nothing to do with me. It's not anything I do.
And you know that the camera loves that.
Yeah.
That's good.
But I don't do anything about it. And it would be fatal if you did. You'd then end up like... No, I mustn't say that. I was going to say you'd end up like all those American actresses who spend so much time worrying about what they look like that you never get to do any acting.
Yeah, that's true.
Zip.
Okay, so what do you think is the most important role you played as an actor in your career? For you, not talking about critics or...
Yeah, no. Most important? I don't know, really. I've done quite a bit of Shakespeare on the stage. And in some ways, that you could say that was the most important, because that way you learn at the hands of a master whether you're any good or not, if you can carry that off, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's better acting than film acting. It's just there's a level in it to achieve, you know. And I think I have achieved it from time to time. Yes, I've always known I could do it and understood it. And that stems from when I was a kid at school, when I had a very good English teacher who introduced us, I remember vividly, a lesson on Macbeth, where I suddenly understood at age 12 or 13, oh, this is what this is about, this is what this language means, and it's never been a problem for me, that.
Yeah, that's important. So now our last question. The most rewarding role that you have in your career as an actor will be?
I suppose Belloq would be the most rewarding in terms of fairly on in my film career, because I was already 40 or so by the time I did that. It meant that for many years I was very well known because of that. So it made life much easier. Also, it turned out to be, although we didn't know at the time, that it was going to be a big classic movie. So it has, obviously, because you're here now, we're here now, it has an ongoing life, which has been tremendous. In terms of rewarding artistically, it was rewarding artistically, and it is. But there have been others. This film, Morlang, for instance, I won a Best Actor Award at International Festival in Cairo in 2001 for that. And there have been a few other parts. There was a TV film I did called When I'm 64, that I'm very proud of.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been a lot of variety.
Yeah.
And it's the variety I like of going from one to the other.
We believe that what makes you a legend. It's kind of
a legend in my own lifetime.
So, thank you for your time, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you.
An honor.
How big is your community?
Well, we are like 190-something members.
Oh, God. You don't all live together?
No, we have people from Germany.
I'm joking. I imagined you didn't. It's not a monastery. No. Not all like Trappist monks watching Indiana Jones films all day and night.
Well, last time, you're not going to believe this, but last time we watched Indiana Jones, the three first movies in a big screen was 1 month ago in Madrid, in a huge cinema.
Oh, yes.
So we prepared.
Yeah. And was it full?
Well, it's a company that is about taking 35 millimeters copies from old cinemas and projecting in once again in big screen, only movies from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
So
oh, interesting. So you
that
get to see them as they should look.
Yeah, it's kind of a vintage thing, but you know, that's our stuff. Yeah. So, it will be a great pleasure for us, since we have all kind of members, that you'll be a member of honor of our community.
Oh, well, I'd be delighted. Yes.
And for us, we would like to give you a present we brought, if you will so kind of accept it.
Thank you very much. What is this?
Oh, it's a present.
Ah! René E. Belloq. Is that right? Or have you made that up? I don't remember the E.
Yeah, it's Emile.
Emile, you're quite right. Yes, yes, yes.
You know
How
everything
lovely.
about.
How lovely. Asociación de la Comunidad Fan Española de Indiana Jones. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll put it like this. Come here. Great. Thank you.
Would you mind a picture with a hat?
Sure.
This one is a wood one. It's exactly the one they use
This
in
is Indiana's hat.
in the fourth movie.
It's the real one?
Yeah.
In the fourth movie?
Yeah, that was made in Seville in Spain. We changed the maker, but it's exactly the same one.
It's small for me.